Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. I'm Biola Alabi.
I'm Tundra Abiola.
And I'm Veronica Daka. Welcome back.
President Muhammadu Buhari may have rekindled a flickering flame of hope when he warned governors of Nigeria's 36 states to desist from touching the monthly budgetary allocation of local government administrations in their domains. Henceforth, the president wants local governments to draw from source all monies meant for them, just like their state and federal counterparts. The story of how Nigerian state governors have made a habit of sabotaging the local government structure as a means of misappropriating its resources makes for an interesting read, with most analysts pinning down the expanding culture of corruption on this practice. We're now being joined from Arise Abuja studio by Wale Oluwade, a public and financial affairs analyst, to look at the likely impacts of this move on the political economy of Nigeria. He will also touch on the Osun governorship crisis. Welcome to the program, Mr. Oluwade.
Thank you, Tundu. Good morning. Good morning, Viola. Good morning, Veronica.
Good morning. It's always good to have you on.
So, what's your...
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What's your assessment of this edict by the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit restricting the access that state governments have to local government funds?
Yeah, thanks, Tundu. It's a step in the right direction, I think, because it's never too late to do what is right. But I think that is barely scratching it, because the issue of the misgovernance, at the local governments, or almost a total absence of government at the local councils all over Nigeria, goes beyond just making policy pronouncements. Yesterday I watched the APC had an event, and the president was talking about it is time to have true federalism and all of that. I think since he's gotten a second term now, without prejudice to the outcome of the petitions at the Presidential Election Tribunal, if he is thus confirmed to have actually won, now he's not getting a third term. He's not owing any political IOUs. So the president should think, about his legacy. He should think about what is history going to record, to him as having done to improve the lot of Nigerians. Because if you look at the constitution that sets out our democracy, we practice a constitutional democracy. The constitution in section 7, talks about the reality of a third tier of government, which is the local government, and that, at the same time, puts the mandate, the setting of the administration, the management, and the oversight of the local government, in the hands of the state government, both the State House of Assembly and the state executives. Now, to me, that is giving with one hand and taking it, away with the other hand. Because the way I read the Constitution, especially if you look at Section 162 also, that talks about the creation, of the states and joint local government accounts. And if you also look at the provisions of Section 106 that prescribes the minimum qualification threshold for who can be local government chairman or councillors, that is the reason why the local government will never function the way it should function. And if we understand that where real governance, where actual development, of nation building takes place, is at the grassroots level, the local government level. So it goes beyond making a policy statement based on the advisory from the NFIU. The president should sit down with the incoming 9th Assembly and decide to amend this constitution. So we go back to the issue of restructuring. We should amend this constitution that has become an albatross rather than a vehicle, for transforming this country. Because all the major services that impact directly in the lives of the people at the grassroots, are what the local councils ought to be doing. But they are not doing that because, like I said, the local governments exist only on paper. In actual terms, there are no third tiers of government in Nigeria. So I think it goes beyond just making policy pronouncements until, the constitution is amended, nothing is going to happen, because all it needs now is one of the governors or a couple of governors or state governments to go to the Supreme Court to ask that, does the federal government have the right, because the provision of Section 162 clearly states, expressly that there must be the creation of a state and local government joint account. So the executive at the federal, government cannot unilaterally, alter that position of the law. So until that is done, this is not going to. And of course, I listened to a governor from the Southwest state, one of the Southwest states, yesterday on one of the TV channels, saying outrightly that there are only 2 tiers of government in Nigeria. In essence, that there is no local government. He does not recognize the local governments, because if you read the totality of the Constitution, the local governments actually, as it is presently, are mere administrative units of the states, and that is not the intention of the framers of the Constitution. That's what I think.
Well, thank you for sort of creating context. One of the things you said, you brought up a couple of things. One of the things that I wanted to pick up on was actually the quality of the local government leadership. There are 774 local governments in Nigeria. Over the years, with this lack of independence, they also have lost a lot of power. Do you think that this sort of empowers them and emboldens them, and how can they take advantage of sort of this new proclamation and support that they're enjoying from the presidency?
Thank you, Biola. At the commencement of this Fourth Republic, there used to be an association called the Association of Local Governments, ALGON, of Nigeria. They were very strong. They formed this body to become sort of a pressure group, to fight for their rights. But it would seem to me that also later on, then you had the Governors Forum emerge. And it will seem to me that as the Governors Forum became more powerful, more prominent, the ALGON, almost died. I think they still exist, but it's almost become, non-existent in reality. Now, you touched on a very important point, Biola, because Section 106 prescribes a minimum qualification requirement for whoever is going to be local government chairman or councillors, and that is primary 6 certification. But if you juxtapose that with what you have in the 4th schedule of the Constitution that clearly spells out the duties, the functions, the role, of the local government, then you will know that there is no way that can ever happen. Because if you look at the issues that, directly impact in the lives of the people, housing, healthcare, primary healthcare, primary education, secondary education, sewage, waste management, markets, collecting taxes, collecting levies, collecting rates, I mean, these are critical services that the local governments, building roads, I mean, building houses for the residents of the local, council area. These are services that the management, the chairman of the local council and the councillors ought to sit down, have a strategy session, develop a master plan on how to, make sure these services are present or are offered to the people of their locality. But if you have people who are primary 6 certificate holders, there's a mismatch in terms of roles, functions, and the capacity to do that. Because I was here earlier in the week, and I did tell you that. I mean, if you look at the Constitution in total as regards local government administration in Nigeria, I don't think and that's why I support those who call for an entire revamping of this Constitution, because it is totally it's not delivering, and we need to work to do the right thing. Because in the United Kingdom, for instance, they practice a unitary monarchy system of government. They don't have states. They have actually a 2-tier, apart from the federal government, they have a 2-tier council system. So you have the district councils and you have the county councils. Now, in most of those councils, not all of the councils, if you don't have accommodation, they give you council flats. I'm sure you've heard of council flats. If you don't have jobs, they give you stipends on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis. That's because at the local level, you know everybody in your locality. Not a state governor sits down at the government house. You cannot know everybody in a state as big as, let's say, Oyo State or Kano State, where you have 44 local governments. And I'm sure if the Kano State government had it, I'm sure it would want to create more LCDs like they did in Lagos. You know, so the essence of local, government administration is to bring governance, development, really closer to the people. So you have councillors who are meant to be next door neighbors. They're meant to be residents in the locality and they're next door neighbors. They know everybody. And it is at that level that you can actually solve most of the problems, if not all the problems that we face in Nigeria. Take, for instance, population explosion. Our GDP is growing abysmally at 1.9, maybe 2%, but population is growing 2.6, 3% annually. Now, if you have a councillor in a neighborhood, in a local government, who sees his or her neighbor, having 4 or 5 children, he's able to tell, maybe over lunch or, in the church or in the mosque to say, at the rate you're having kids like rabbits, the council can't fund your children. We can't pay for school because we budgeted for 1,000, children going to primary school or for 100, mothers, having deliveries. We didn't budget for more than 100 babies to be born in this locality. You're able to nip those issues, right there at the grassroots. But if a minister at the federal government makes a pronouncement on population control, then it becomes a political issue, becomes a religious issue, a tribal issue. Take another issue of housing. If you listen to former Governor Babatunde Fashola, the Minister for Works, Housing and Power, every time he talks about, he's become a storyteller, and this is someone I really used to respect immensely for his intellect, and his energy, his drive, and the way he governed Lagos State. He came to the federal government. Each time he talks about power, his excuses, stories. He talks about works. He will tell us the history of works in Nigeria and how they should elongate the tenure of the works ministry. Let's talk about housing. I've listened to him a couple of times, and he says, the problem is we need to have a standardized model of housing that is acceptable to every Nigerian. How does that sound to you, Tudu, or Biola, or Veronica? How do you have standardized model of accommodation for every Nigerian? Because in the Niger Delta, in the creeks, the housing need is different from the housing need, even in Abuja. Even in the north, in the farthest parts of the north. So it is at the local level that they plan their accommodation needs, and they build those prototype houses, and they allocate them to their residents, and they solve the issue of housing. And by doing that, you solve another major problem we have in Nigeria, which is rural-urban migration. Everybody needs to move from the hinterlands to go to Lagos, to come to Abuja, to come to, Port Harcourt, for instance, because they're searching for the proverbial golden fleece. And there are no jobs there. There are no accommodation. So when they come to Lagos, the facilities that are built for maybe 10 million people in Lagos is now overstretched, because now you have 24, 25 million people living in Lagos, because everybody is moving in their thousands on a daily basis coming to Lagos. But if you have the local governments developed, empowered, given outright total autonomy, doing what they should be doing, rendering critical services to the people, to the masses of this country, you will not have that influx. Let me talk about another thing the local government will help to solve. Another existential problem we're facing today is insecurity. If you have a well-functioning local government administration, the councillor, the chairman, there's no way they would not know everybody in there, because a local government is not meant to be more than maybe 500 houses, at most 800 or 1,000. You should have an idea. If the chairman does not, the councillors should know everybody that lives in that local council. So if a stranger comes in or someone commits a crime, combating crime is best handled at the community level. And that's why we're advocating, for community policing, for state policing. You cannot have a federal government, a federal police system to police 774 local governments. And to my mind, if you empower the local governments, if you empower the states to create additional local governments for the purposes of, providing real service, real tangible development for this country, we should have far more than 774, because Nigeria is vast. Nigeria is a big, huge country. So, the system as it is presently, it's not designed to work, and that's why we have this nightmare in terms of governance, because there is no developed, advanced society. India, China, America, there's nowhere you have this monstrosity that we're practicing that is, on paper, we say we have a federal system, but in actuality, what we have is a unitary system of government, and it's not taking us anywhere. The system is collapsing on all of our heads, and I think the president should do everybody a favor. He has no political LOUs to pay. It is high time, he admits that I mean, restructuring this country is a necessity. It's an existential necessity that must be done, and the time to do it is now. And he has the power. He has everything, to do it just for the sake of legacy, historical, so that it will be in the history books that it was under him that this country actually, moved from being, a laggard, and we can begin to have real growth, real development.
Thank you so much. I actually want to buttress your point and give you an example, and then I have a question. As you were speaking, actually, I was reminded by an effort that I witnessed when I was in New York. There was a borough in New York, which is basically a local government, that was tracking as the most overweight borough, which meant that they were unhealthy and therefore their cost for health was higher than other boroughs. And so what the borough president did, which is local government chairman essentially, started this whole fitness campaign to get them to be the fittest borough in New York, which worked very well because, of course, it's a small place. But really, it sort of started out like sort of this competition. But at the end of the day, the goal was to reduce the cost of healthcare and obviously have a healthier populace, which means you have people being more productive, you have more people contributing more. When you look across Nigeria, what states can we say are poised to be able to take advantage in a way that other states are? Not other states are going to be able to do this right away, but are there some states that you see that you say, you know what, they have been practicing some in a maybe loose way than others? Are there any states that stand out to you?
I don't see, really any state standing out to me, because if you look at the Constitution in Section 7 says the local governments should be democratically, elected. But the question, Biola, is that do you know any states where the State's Independent Electoral Commission conducts election that is actually democratic? Because if you do not have democracy at that unit of governance, then you cannot have development. You cannot have real development. What I just itemized, what I just described to you that is going on in other places. China is a nation of 1.4, 1.5 billion people. How did China rapidly develop? It is because they knew, in poverty eradication, for instance, in China, lifting 856 million people in less than 30 years, about 30 years, out of extreme poverty. There was a smart goal, and then there was a huge budget. A massive budget. Now, this funds was sent directly, to the provinces, from the provinces, to the counties, to the villages, because that is where actual development, takes place. You don't have that here, because what is going on here is the revenue sharing formula, 52.6% to the federal government, 26.7% to the states, and 20%. But in practical purposes, the states have appropriated, the 20% to the states. So the states now have 46%, of the revenue from the federation allocation account. Now, why are the states so determined to emasculate and to make sure that the local governments do not exist? Number one, the power of patronage, because they are able to give contracts. They're able to award contracts for road, for bridges, for schools, for services. Now, these are what the local governments, like I said, should be doing. Now, because the states are doing what the local government should be doing, the states have, abdicated its own responsibility. So a state like Lagos, where you guys are, there is no rail, no intramodal, no intra-city rail system to ease transportation. Since I was born, transportation has been the number one crisis in Lagos, and it has still remained till today. Why? Because the state is not doing what it should be doing. The state should be focusing on energy, provision of energy, power, provision of to ease transportation, rail, and such other big ideas, and fashioning out a massive economic blueprint and the rest of that. But if the state is not doing that, you have a governor commissioning boreholes and, calling civil stations to come and highlight his development strides because he's commissioning roads in the villages, in the rural areas. Then what is the essence of the local government? So I still repeat, we need to go back, to doing the right thing, the ground norm, the foundation upon which this so-called constitutional democracy is based is the 1999 Constitution, and it has been tagged by eminent constitutional lawyers Professor Akin Oyebode, Professor Ben Nwabueze, and the rest of that. It is a fraud. It is a document, that is not going to go anywhere. As it is currently, we have stifled access to governance, to the grassroots. And then we have this problem, and we're wondering, why is the country heaving, like a woman in the throes in labor throes, because the people don't have access. If you come to the outskirts of Abuja, Nyanya, Maraba, and the rest of them, they are ghettos, they are terrible slums. You cannot imagine where people live just 5 minutes in the outskirts of Abuja. And why? Because there is no governance. Most of the local government chairmen, they're hanging around in the waiting rooms of the state excellency, the state governors. Because at the end of the day, when they get the money, the governor has to give them maybe dollars, 10 million, 5 million, for whatever is due to them. They are emasculated. And if you don't show up there regularly to pay homage to His Excellency, you'll be deemed to be engaging in anti-party activities, and you'll not get anything, and you'll be removed. So Biola, I maintain that until there is, total autonomy for local governments, we're going to have this, we're going to keep having this crisis, because the local governments must be democratic in every respect. The same way, INEC conducts election for the federal government and the state government, we should have an independent body. It may not be INEC, so that we don't overburden INEC, but the way the state's independent electoral commissions are presently constituted, there will never be democracy. And of course, as Bill Clinton says, if there is no democracy, there can't be governance.
Okay,
that's a lot.
That was a lot, and I do agree with what you said, that we all agree that our local governments are the hope, of the grassroots people. And I wrote down some points that you made, and I have specific questions that I would like you to address. Some of the problems we're facing right now are the financial interference, corruption. You highlighted that. Definitely made points to having unqualified leaders. Also, overpopulation in the workforce. These are some of the challenges that we're facing within government in our local government areas in our states. Now, the president has made the proclamation at this point. How do you foresee the transition of power, so-called power, back to the local governments being possible for the betterment of the people for which they actually need to serve? I want specific strategies or measures that you think should be taken, the actions that can be put in place as we look at these issues that we're facing. And beyond that, what measures should be put in place to ensure that the tenures, the qualifications of the local government that are created, the process are effective and operate effectively?
Thank you, Veronica. It's like I said, it's a step in the right direction to say, let the money due to the local governments, the 20% from the federation account goes directly to the local governments. Fine. But I did say here during the week, that if you take this money from the hands of a group of wasters, because that is what it is currently, and you give it to this, barely literate. I think most of them are illiterate. The current, the people, at that level of governance in the local government. Who are they actually? These are party hirelings. They are party, men and women that the party hierarchy thinks the best way to reward them is to give them, reward them as party chairmen or councillors or, in the party, in the local council administration, just to reward something for the boys, just jobs for the boys. That is not the intention. From the little I've highlighted on what, local government does in other places, that is not what it is. So if you do not improve the capacity, I'm talking about administrative skills, management skills, managing resources, managing people, administration, to administer an office, to administer a project. They need project management because to conceive, to design a school, to develop a plan for the number of students over maybe 5 years or 10 years, to plan for population, to plan for healthcare, to plan for waste, for sewage, to plan for housing. That we're going to have this number of houses, and so we expect that there will be this number of waste generated, and so we need this number of trucks, to carry this number of waste. We need these silos to be here. We need these, landfills to be here. It requires a certain level of minimum education, which cannot be less than a university education. And then it's not just being educated at the university. You also need to have administrative skills, management skills, then leadership skills. Now, and also, finally, you need them to be elected, in a democratic manner so that I mean, they can be governance, because if it is democratic, there are other parties. If this party wins and they are in management, they are kept on their toes to deliver services. Because if they don't deliver, the other parties will use their non-performance to campaign against them and probably take power. So that is how you create healthy rivalry. But to just think that because there is a policy pronouncement and money is now given directly to them, I worry more. Because I'm afraid that you are taking money from, you know, the governors who have rather allow them to have this money than to give the money to, you know, I mean, like I said, in the beginning of this Fourth Republic, the likes of, I mean, Governor Wike of Rivers State now used to be a local government chairman in Obiakpo, the largest local government, the richest local government in Rivers State, before he became chief of staff and then finally became minister and then governor. So you can see the trajectory. And he's a lawyer. He's not an illiterate. And there are a number of them like that. But the current, you know, persons who are chairmen or councillors, what is their level of qualification? I've seen a few of them. You'll be shocked. Like I said, they are barely literate. Most of them are illiterate. Most of them are, I mean, I'm sorry to say, just thugs. You know, that the party just feels we need to reward the boys who have done some of these jobs. So you keep them there, and they're not expected to do anything. But at the end of the month, so until the constitution is amended, or probably a new constitution, you know, fashion, even though that may take time, because we need to start delivering services, essential, critical services to the grassroots. So to arrest, you know, what is going on all over Nigeria, whether it is insecurity, whether it is, I mean, the number of children out of school, because it is the local government that ought to provide, you know, primary education, secondary education. I was born in Ibadan, Oyo State. I went to primary school in Oyo State. I went to secondary school in Oyo State. And these were some of the best primary and secondary schools anywhere in the world. I didn't go outside of Nigeria to see a hockey field or a badminton. I saw that in Loyola College in Ibadan. You know, so what are we talking about? But here, and my primary school in Ibadan was owned by Ibadan Municipal Local Government, you know. So, and it was the best. It was one of the best in that. When I was growing up in Ibadan, how many private schools they were there? Omolewa and maybe one other one. And that was all. Everybody went to the public schools. And we got the best education. Is that the same thing now? No. So these guys that are currently at that local level, there's no structure. There's nothing in place for them to work with. So you giving them money without giving them the structure and giving them the capacity, I mean, it's a double whammy, and I wouldn't advocate for that at all.
Wow.
So you've cited...
Thank you. One second. We're going to go on break. While we're going to go on break, when we come back, Tundu is going to continue. Just give us a minute. We'll be right back.
There is a reason Africa is called the new frontier. What was once potential is now an opportunity ready to be seized. Once revered for our resources, today's wealth lies in our people. People who build the cities that shape the future. People who know an idea in one place means business in another. A generation for whom technology means there are no borders, no boundaries. We are the new lions in a brave new world, kings of the urban jungle. And there's a bank that puts the world in our pocket and the future in our hands. UBA, Africa's global bank.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Think Zenith. In today's fast-moving, fast-changing world, you need a financial partner that understands your unique expectations. A bank with presence in major financial centers across the world, with the enabling platform to facilitate seamlessly, whenever, wherever, or however. A bank with best-in-class financial solutions from a superb combination of technology and human touch for easy, fast, and secure banking that creates real value. Turning dreams into reality is now in your hands. People, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
In a fast-paced world, you need the ability to make everything move at your own speed, to stay ahead, and not miss anything. That's why I'm a More Life Complete, which lets me call everyone in Nigeria on all networks at just 15 kobo per second. I can also call any line in the United States, Canada, UK, Germany, India, China, and Malaysia too, at just 15 kobo per second. And just when you think life can't get any easier, I get 15 free minutes to call anyone in the 9 Mobile family.
Just booked your ticket to London.
Before you think I've got to compete on More Life, I also get 15 minutes free browsing to catch up on sports updates and anything online. Now that's what I call the complete package.
There's an old saying in Nigeria, thoughts and dreams are the foundation of our being. At First Bank, we dare to dream and strive to innovate, continuing our over 120-year tradition to be the first to offer new products and services to our customers. You first. First Bank.
Dear Mom, thank you for making my hair look great for my prom. All my friends were jealous.
For over 25 years, we have satisfied different generations of women. With our unique brand of hair cream, the Soulmate Hair Conditioner Plus, a rich, concentrated formula that produces magnificent hair conditioning and shine to give you that look of confidence. Soulmate Hair Conditioner Plus, hair care like soul care.
Welcome back to the morning show. We're still with Wale Oluwade talking about the new proclamation of separating and decentralizing our tiers of government. And to start, Tunu.
Yes, as I was saying, Mr. Oluwade, you've highlighted the hubris, the sort of selfishness in this system, but bearing in mind those realities of our political climate, what needs to change is a constitutional amendment. What is the likelihood of this? Can you point to any individual or arm of government in this system that will willingly curtail their own powers? Will the state houses of assembly willingly relinquish the stranglehold the Constitution gives them over local government administration? Look at the last constitutional amendment that we had, the Not Too Young to Run bill, which was passed by 25 state houses of assembly, one more than the constitutional minimum required, which is 24 state houses of assembly. But then you now look at the local government autonomy bill, which has only been passed by 9 states. It tells you the direction, that the thinking of these legislators. How do we circumvent the inherent selfishness in this system?
Brilliant question, Tunu. I mean, I doff my hat for that question. That's a brilliant question. Let me, for a moment talk about nation building. Because when you talk about local government administration, we're talking about building a nation. You see, this funny thing we're doing with this federal system where people around all over the place want to be governor, want to be president, and that's why you have this very fierce contest for political power. Because if the local government was set up as it should be, you would have, reduction. I mean, the last presidential elections, you had 91 political parties and 71 candidates aspiring to be president of Nigeria. I mean, that is unbelievable. Because where actual work, where actual governance and development takes place, it's at the grassroots. And that is what the local government does. You do not build a nation from the top. You build a nation just like you build every other building. Every other building, a bungalow, a 1-story, 2-story skyscraper, every other building is built bottom up, and that's how you build a nation. If it's for people, you've got to build it from the bottom up. And that leads me to the next point, which is that the present revenue sharing formula, it is a disservice to Nigeria. Because if you have an inverted pyramid where the actual work, actual governance, actual services are being provided for the people is at the grassroots, the local government level, and then you give them 20%, and the 20%, probably only 1% finally gets to them. But then you have this federal government, this monstrosity, the creation of the law that does nothing. You all have people, guzzling resources, wasting resources. So we need to also tinker with that. Now, directly to your question, Tunu. I think it is in our enlightened self-interest, and I include myself as the elite of this nation, that the time to do what is right, was maybe 30, 40 years ago. But since we didn't do it, even up to last year, and when they were doing this last constitutional review amendment, it was not done. I think the next time to do it is as soon as this 9th Assembly is inaugurated on the 2nd or 3rd of June, I think they should sit down. Like I said it during the week, the president should sit down.
Sure.
And that's why I vehemently oppose the selection by the APC of Ahmed Lawan and all those kind of people, because these are establishment people. We need reformist-minded people. We need radicals, and these radicals are not just going to be radicals who are empty-headed. They need to be radicals with some level of intellectual capacity to know that what is staring us in the face, all these crises you see all over the place about population, about security, about unemployment, it is because the critical arm of government, where governance takes place, has collapsed completely. And you have governors going all over the place with siren, wearing all those sort of funny attires. You have ministers saying all sort of things. Oh, we need to have tenure elongated. For as long as these elites do not sit down and know that, you have created an ocean of poverty, of misery, and then you created this tiny island of paradise. And then see now, the chickens have come home to roost. But not only the chickens, the foxes are amongst the chickens. And nobody can sleep now with their eyes closed. We can't travel on the roads. We can't do most of the things we need to do. So because it is an existential threat. So the selfishness, it's me or no one, only me, my family, and nobody else. It has brought us to where we are. The ruling elite in Nigeria realizes the danger, the nuclear, device that they've created and is amongst us waiting to explode. The better for all of us that this constitution needs to be amended. And I say it again, I appeal to the conscience of President Muhammadu Buhari. He's not getting a third term, except, they amend the constitution through Ahmed Lawan and Femi Gbajabiamila. He's not going to get a third term, so he has no political IOUs. He could do the needful now, amend this constitution for the sake of ourselves and our children yet unborn.
So we're going to wrap up on this, but I guess the last point I just want you to make is, at the end of the day, this is, and just please correct me if I'm wrong, if I have misunderstood you, this really purely depends on political will of the president to make this happen. At the end of the day, this is dead on arrival.
This is dead on arrival, Biola. If the president does not do it, the National Assembly can do it. They are an independent arm of government. When we're talking about the National Assembly and the choice of Lawan, and I was vehemently against them because I said the National Assembly without the executive. That is why this democracy provides for checks and balances. The National Assembly can make the necessary amendments, and if the president does not assent, they can override his veto and make it a law that so many things, state policing, community policing, distinct autonomy, for local government administration in Nigeria. They can do it. If the National Assembly if the president does not do it, the National Assembly can do it. But it would be so wonderful if both arms, realizing, that we are in a crisis, sit down and do this. Except that, if this, what the president did is what Professor Soludo calls tinkering at the margins. We like tokenisms, ad hoc measures, and it has never taken us anywhere. It's not going to take us anywhere in this scenario as well.
I guess what we wanted to do was...
Yes. We're going to move it on to what is happening recently in Osun State, and just get your opinion and your feedback on what you think about the appeal court judgment that overruled the tribunal and restored Boyega Oyetola as Osun State governorship-elect. What is your take on this?
Thank you. And I also need to give a caveat that now I'm speaking as a team member of the Adeleke. I'm not a politician, I'm not a member of PDP, but I'm a member of the Adeleke governorship team. So I speak as one who was privy to what went on at the tribunal. The tribunal sat for months, because of the threat of violence. The sitting was moved, the tribunal sitting was moved from Osogbo to Abuja. And I was going there every day with, of course, the other team members, and we called a total of over 82, 85 witnesses. They posed testimonies of maybe documentary evidence of over 400 exhibits were tendered, and accepted by the tribunal. And the proceedings went on. you know, and at the end of the day, our grounds for petition at the tribunal were three. Number one, overvoting. Number two, substantial non-compliance with the Electoral Act. And number three, ballot accounting, that INEC could not account for ballot papers given out on the day of voting. Now, what happened? By the time the tribunal, INEC did not call witnesses, you know, to defend itself, you know, on why, you know, the resident electoral commissioner, you know, unilaterally, you know, cancelled elections in 7 polling units and declared a rerun, you know, and so many other evidence of malpractices, the falsification of documents. For instance, every polling unit have from ECA 8 where, you know, what went on at the polling units are recorded. Okay, number of accredited voters, number of votes scored by each party is total, and then the total. Now, and they gave out pink copies to every political party that participated in the elections. And they, you know, of course, so when we got to the tribunal, we had to subpoena INEC, the CTC, that's certified true copies from INEC office. By the time we compared the CTC with our pink copies, we saw mutilations, falsifications, doctorings. And the tribunal agreed with us that INEC went, after everything was done, after all the party agents signed on the pink copies that were issued to them, INEC went back and worked on their own, you know, certified, on their own copies, you know, and the tribunal came down hard. The justices came down hard on them. And of course, found in our favor that Senator Nuruddin Ademola Adeleke was the truly elected winner of the elections on this September 22nd, 2018. Now, the tribunal also said the rerun was needless. It was a contrivance, you know, and that, I mean, and because of the mutilations, the tribunal also cancelled the voting that took place in 17 polling units, and that gave us an outright victory. Now, what happened at the appeal court? And I was at the appeal court also on Wednesday. What happened? Thursday. What happened? They said because one of the judges, because there are 3 judges at the tribunal, so Judge Obiora did not sit for 1 day, just 1 day. Now, the justices, 4 of them at the appeal court said because he did not sit, so everything that went down, all the judgments of the tribunal was a nullity. And that is absurd. I find it, I mean, trying to be diplomatic, a perversion of natural justice. It's a miscarriage of justice.
So now that the Court of Appeal has ruled, now that the Court of Appeal has ruled more on the technicality than on the merits, what are the options before Senator Adeleke?
Yes. Of course, we're going to the appeal court. But only before we're going to appeal, we're appealing to the Supreme Court. But the point needs to be made that on that day, only 2 witnesses were called. Only 1 day that Judge Obiora did not sit, only 2 witnesses were called. And their testimonies had no nexus, no link at all to everything that transpired upon which the tribunal based its judgments. Now, let me also clarify. If you have a board, the constitution of a board or Senate rules or politics, you know, even the tribunal panel of justices envisages that maybe for whatever reason, maybe there will not be 3 of them sitting. So you expect that there will be quorum. So if out of 3, just for 1 day, two of the judges sat, that is quorum. So it is a strange, you know, decision that the appeal court gave. And now, if you listen to the dissenting justice, the opinion of the dissenting judge Mbamba, I mean, everything that the majority ruling of the tribunal, you know, held in our favor was what he simply rehashed, and it came down heavy on INEC. They did not defend themselves. They did not tender any evidence, you know, and then you come to the appeal to make appeal. What are you appealing? You didn't defend yourself at the tribunal, and then you come to appeal. So, like I said, we've gone to the Supreme Court, you know, because we think this is a perversion of natural justice, of logic. It defies. I mean, I can't. It's strange, you know, because I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, I follow the law, you know. I mean, interestingly, you cannot live in a society such as ours and be ignorant of the law, you know. So I know this is a strange, you know, decision of the appeal court.
Wow, passionate member of the team, Wale Oluwade. Thank you so much. It's always good to have you on. We look forward to having you again. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Time for a short break now. When we return, we'll be joined by security professional Kabir Adamu to look at President Buhari's latest verbal commitment to defeat the forces of terrorism in Nigeria. Stay with us.